All right, we are live. Thank you for joining us today. I have two special guests with me today, Nicole Erickson and Caitlin. How do you say your last name? Triana? Triana. Okay,
Yeah.
I knew it was one or the other. From Smallbatch, which is one of our partners for the Feed Real Summit that's coming up next month. I can say, wow, I don't know how it's already September. October 11th and 12th, we will be in San Diego at the Feed Real Summit, the third year in a row, our third annual. I'm so excited for this year. We have amazing partners. We have amazing speakers, panelists, workshops. It's going to be such an amazing day. So hopefully everyone that watches this will have gotten their ticket. If not, hopefully you will grab your ticket before they sell out. They're close to selling out. So if you're thinking about doing that, you need to get on that. So we talked with Smallbatch, a couple weeks ago, you guys were on with Ruby. But today we're going to touch on a different topic with them. We're going to talk about food labels and how to read them and how to read them correctly so that you understand what's really in that bag. Before we start that, Nicole and Caitlin, I'd like you to introduce yourself just a little bit. Give us a little background of your history with fresh feeding and where you fall into that. And yeah.
Sure. My name's Nicole. I've been with Smallbatch now for almost 8 years.
Nice.
And before that was in the independent pet retail world for about 7.5. So the last 15 has been consumed with super premium pet products and wellness efforts. Before that, just growing up, my household was super clean living oriented. My mom was fascinated with herbs and essential oils and, cleaning products were water and vinegar. And, she was very crunchy. So a lot of the sort of holistic wellness was already part of my daily routine. But getting into the manufacturing side with Smallbatch has been a really awesome deep dive into how products make it onto the shelves and what hoops manufacturers really have to go through to decide how they get a product to market, what their commitments and pillars are for, standards. But I've now been a raw feeder myself for about 18 years. I have a chocolate Labrador and a little mini Aussie, and they are beyond spoiled and are really great examples of what feeding a quality diet does for general vitality.
How old's your lab?
She is 6 years old now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the little Aussie is 3.
Okay. So
Maple
young
and
dogs.
Ripley, they're so cute.
Aw.
Yes. Maple and Ripley.
That's awesome. And Caitlin, what about you? Can you introduce yourself a little bit?
Caitlin, I've been with Smallbatch for almost 4 years now, I think. I tend to lose track of time because it feels like I've been here a lot longer, but like in the best way. I do customer service. So if you're writing in an email or sending live chat, it is the one and only me.
That's who you're talking to.
Yes. Before Smallbatch, I worked in pet retail through independent retailers. It's kind of how I got my start with raw feeding, with wanting to learn more about the industry. I started at Mud Bay out in Washington, and then since then I've been with some other smaller independent retailers until Smallbatch snatched me up.
Nice.
So that helped get my introduction to this whole world. I have been raw feeding, it'll be probably 10 or 11 years now since we got our first dog after I got married to my husband. Her name's Marley. She's about 11-ish.
Nice.
And she's been raw fed almost the entire time we've had her. And then we also have an Australian Shepherd, Cooper, who's about 8, and he's been raw fed since he was about 8 weeks old.
Wow.
So he's a pretty lean, pretty healthy dude. So I think it's, like Nicole said, a really good testament to, feeding real foods and how much they really thrive, and helps them overcome, things that maybe they were predetermined to have, and they're
Mm-hmm.
help support their bodies and things like that. So I do have a history in animal science. I went to Virginia Tech and got my bachelor's in that. More so on the horse side. I'm a horse girl, but it gave me a really good foundation into understanding some of the basics of nutrition and, you know, feeding different types of animals real foods. So
that's awesome. Yeah, I've only been in the space for about 4 years. I've been with Feedreal for a little over 4 years. And before that, I'm a conventionally trained vet tech. You know, we were told that kibble is what you feed. And so it was one paradigm shift after the other over the last 4 years. And I love it. So
welcome to the other side.
That's right.
Say welcome to the dark side.
Yeah.
I love it. Well, today we're going to discuss labels. With Nicole, it says you're the retail marketing manager, so you obviously have to deal with this a lot. You know, what we can put on those bags and why those terms mean something and what they mean. So, first of all, the human grade tag on things. Tell us about that.
Yeah, it's an interesting world to produce a commercially available product and have to package, which needs to be registered in each and every state that we want our products to be sold in. So the requirements set by Departments of Agriculture, FDA, and AFCO for approved language touch almost every part of that packaging that we create. In the same way that we want it to hopefully make guarantees about quality, it also can serve to really limit and sort of generalize a lot of the more specific facets of quality when it comes to what actually goes in the bag. So the term human grade is one of my favorites to loathe in how frequently it gets thrown around in the world of pet food. I think it was popularized as sort of marketing jargon a number of years ago. And what it did do for us was get people thinking that something other than human grade does in fact exist when it comes to materials that can be utilized in pet food.
Right.
And hopefully a lot of our audience here, if they've found Feedreal or they're familiar with Smallbatch, they've become, you know, a little bit familiarized with the major brands and what is typical of mass-produced commercial grocery products. But that idea that feed grade is its own realm, and therefore everything kind of falling above that strata as human grade being the superior set of options. While that is definitely a bar that we want to look for, there's also a lot of nuance that comes with that specific term, which is what we wanted to talk about today. So the bar for human grade is not actually particularly high universally when we are talking about meat and produce. Those are the two key components for everything that goes into our diets, right? Meat, organs, bones, produce, and herbs, and that's it.
Right.
But there is an entire strata of products that are human grade, human consumable. They are in products that you will find on your grocery store shelves that are really less than ideal when it comes to form, digestibility, nutrient assimilation, or nutrient density. One that we talk about often at Smallbatch, because it is an ingredient that we have never utilized and will never put in our foods, is mechanically separated meat. It's also called mechanically deboned meat, MDM, MSM, tomato for the meat material. Mechanically separated meat is the rendered leftovers after carcasses have all been processed. It's pink slime or liquid meat, right? That is a human grade ingredient. You could produce a raw pet food, you could make a canned food, you could make a kibble, and the only meat that you are using is mechanically separated meat. and still be able to refer to that ingredient as human grade.
Or as chicken or beef. Or
right.
It's just like any other ingredient.
Well, what makes me laugh when I hear human grade is think about the things that are on the grocery shelf that are human grade, Doritos and Twinkies and you know, all that we would never feed our dogs.
Yeah.
Right. So it's such a misnomer in so many ways.
Yes. If we want, is it better than not having any standard, dictated or called out? Probably yes, because who knows what you are going to be utilizing if you're buying inexpensive foods for certain. But as far as it being a gold star standard and really giving people that picture of the fillet, those whole pieces of organ meats, the beautiful fresh broccoli that we envision when we hear the term human grade. Unfortunately, it's not. And like you mentioned, I'm a human. Humans eat lots of disgusting things. Spam, bologna, hot dogs, those are all human grade, as is every pre-processed, packaged, chip or dip or, the grocery store is not, right. It's not really an ideal place. We have to remember that food shed in our country is made to fulfill the gamut from heavily processed, prepared items all the way up to the super premium, fresh farm to table restaurant and, local grocery or farmer's market tier of quality materials.
Nice. Yeah. And one of the things I think of with human grade, we've talked about this with real dog box products, is some of the things that are deemed not consumable for humans are very consumable for dogs, like ears and
green tripe. We were talking about that earlier.
Green tripe, exactly. And so it is something I agree that people should understand what it means when you see it on the bag, but it's not as, like you said, gold standard as it sounds.
It's kind of the bare minimum bar.
Yeah. We have customers inquire often. I know there are other commercially prepared or consumer available fresh diets that do call out human grade. And we get asked often, why can't we put it all over our bags? And I think Caitlin has one of the most articulate answers for why we...
Ultimately, because we make pet foods, it's kind of like the easiest, explanation. But we're sourcing all of these really premium, high quality ingredients, the same types of heads of broccoli that you'll find at Whole Foods or, your local farmer's market or whatever, whole cuts of meat, bone, and organ. And they're truly beautiful ingredients if anybody ever gets the opportunity to see them, like some of us have. But just because those ingredients are human grade doesn't mean the entire product can be human grade. So like Nicole mentioned earlier, there's all these regulations and certifications that a product has to go through to be able to be sold in all 50 states, like how our product, 49 at this point, we're everywhere but Alaska. But so, to make sure that we're following all the rules and regulations and guidelines, can't put that on the bag because it can be a bit misleading. There can be legal implications. There's very, very few pet food companies that can legally put that on their packaging. I only know of one off the top of my head. So, that says a lot, but there's quite a few companies that are using it on their packaging or even on their website. Websites can also be, under that same umbrella of regulation for what you can and can't say. So when folks reach out to me and say, are your products human grade? That's what I tell them. I said, all the ingredients are, but the product as a whole cannot be considered as such. The frozen products are made in a wonderful facility in California that also makes products for humans. So they follow a lot of the same regulations, safety protocols, FDA guidelines. It's a very safe, clean environment. But there again, it's not registered as such. So It's kind of the same thing. It's just because it is a bar doesn't mean that because something doesn't fall, within those parentheses of human grade doesn't mean that it isn't or that it's bad.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. But there are a lot of other things that you see on bags, like organic, humanely raised, the GAP rating, certified humane, all of that. Where do you guys fall on that?
It's kind of same thing. The lots of regulatory standards. So organic is a good one, for example. Organic can only go can only be labeled on the front of the packaging if 95% of the ingredients in the entire package are certified organic.
Right.
So then they can use the organic labeling. They can use the USDA certified organic seal. Usually you have to register it that way. So it might cost a little extra for the company to be able to include that. For anything that's 70 to 94% organic ingredients, it has to say made with organic ingredients, meaning only a portion of this is considered organic. You can't use the seal. You can't, put it on front of pack, as just organic. And then anything that's under 70% organic, you can only put it in the ingredient label. So for our foods, because they are such high meat content and meat that we source is not necessarily organic, despite it being humanely raised and harvested always.
Sure.
Because it doesn't make up 95% of our ingredient list, we can only put it in the panel. So if you turn our bags around or look on our website, all of the produce and herb ingredients are listed as organic.
Okay.
So that one's a good example. I think some people get kind of hung up on.
Well, I think because so many of these smaller farms, which, it sounds like you guys are using some local or, smaller farms, it's too expensive for them to become certified organic. Yeah. So knowing their practices is very, that's how I do it. I use a farm here in the Nashville area that I know has organic practices, but they're not going to go through that process. And so I understand that that's a stepping stone, stumbling block. Yeah.
And something else to consider too is, for our meat, bone, and organ, we're wanting to prioritize the treatment of the animals. So an organic animal is not always necessarily a humanely raised and harvested animal. A lot of times they are following organic practices as well. And because it kind of goes hand in hand to make sure that you're ethically, raising these animals to, be the best that they can be. But so we're wanting to prioritize the humanely raised and harvested. So organic is a little bit lower on our tier of, requirements in our sourcing.
Okay. That makes sense. Yeah.
For me.
For me, yes.
Yeah.
Produce is always organic.
Yeah.
Okay. That's good to know.
That's an important distinction. The label organic for meat is vastly different than it is for produce. And I mean, if you're going to generalize growing and raising, obviously the way that you would grow and harvest something like bok choy or kale, very different than the way you're raising livestock.
Right.
So yes, when we're talking about protein versus produce, that is a clear distinction to make.
That's funny. I think one of the things that I'd come across here and there throughout being in this space is batch variance, that especially with real food, and you're not putting in synthetics and you're not putting in, manufactured ingredients, if you will. So there's going to be some batch variance. Is that something you can talk about? You know what I mean by that?
Yeah.
It's one of
it's one of my top.
Yes. Yeah. It's one of the things that we find ourselves having to re-educate consumers on over and over and over and over again, because even people that have been using Smallbatch for, let's say, a number of months or a year, they might buy a particular batch and have a different color or a different texture than they have experienced before. And what I feel like is important to say is you can only achieve super consistency with heavily modified or manipulated ingredients. That's how you're going to get the exact same texture, the exact same coloration, the exact same smell, the exact same, palatability or enticement for your animal.
Right.
That's what makes crops, big pet food able to make claims or give you imagery or I was having a conversation at Super Zoo with one of the veterinarians that talks about a lot of the fresh brands in the landscape. Mm-hmm. And we were actually discussing nutrient variance and how that impacts guaranteed analysis and nutritional panels. And what makes fresh food beautiful is that inherent variance. Right. Even if you were feeding, let's say, a very similar set of components where, we're going to use a chicken, meat cut, chicken organs, chicken necks, a set of produce, you are never going to have 2 heads of broccoli that are the same. You are never going to have 2 chickens that have exactly the same size innards. And then you put into it seasonality, right?
Yeah.
Birds are actually, if you harvest toms versus hens, if it is the spring versus the winter, those animals have natural cycles that their bodies follow. So to see variance is what keeps it novel in the animal system when you're talking about those, that nutritional integrity. And it is also what you should expect with fresh food for yourself or for your pet. If it looks the same, we're doing something bad.
Well, and I think that's a key reminder that with fresh food, we are saying that variety is important. Don't get that same formula every time anyway. You want a variety of those nutrients, and each batch is going to be a little different. So
and when you're rotating through different proteins and different produce, if you're doing DIY stuff or through commercial brands, generally speaking, your pets are going to get more used to eating lots of different things. That's something that we run into a lot. I think some of our customers come from feeding, maybe kibble or something that is a lot more uniform in look, smell, appearance, and they try our foods. And, Fluffy has been eating the turkey patties for a month, and now this one's different, and now they won't eat it. There must be something wrong with the food. Generally not. It's generally because it's different. And, Fluffy's been used to eating the same thing his whole life, and now it smells different, it tastes different. And so, if he's eating lots of different types of stuff, the natural variation is not going to bother them quite so much.
Absolutely. And that's where it's really important. I think starting these animals off as young dogs, they're much more likely.
Cats too, especially.
Yeah. I transitioned my daughter's 10-year-old cats and we actually, that's when we did use some Smallbatch. That's right. We did buy some of yours and introduced it that way. Now that I think of it, now we're doing DIY with them, but yours is the food that we, I'm thinking, I knew I'd run across you guys before, but I think that's what we used. And the female transitioned easily because she was in metabolic syndrome and she realized her body needed it. Male, not so much. So your food definitely helped transition him.
That's awesome.
Yeah. That's great.
And I think that's really important is I get that with people with, just switching to raw you don't do it overnight on these animals that are older and used to having the same thing, and you're going to have to work with them. And if you're willing to take that time and energy, it'll pay off and it'll happen.
Yeah, absolutely. We were talking before about training that muscle of metabolic flexibility. And from the inception of Smallbatch, there has always been a sort of undercurrent message of feed as much variety as your animal can handle. And we understand there are limitations with things like ingredient sensitivities and whatnot, but even if you can utilize 2 different recipes as your primary, proteins, that variance is vastly better than not having regular rotation.
And I think people will realize too that once they've done that, then they can add that 3rd one and 4th one in because the body, like you said, has been that that metabolic flexibility has been increased, and then they can tolerate more. So
and there's lots of different ways to include the variety too. Like you guys have all the different treat lines and chews, and it might not be in their base diet that you're rotating,
right.
but you can add extra poppers or goat milk or bone broth or all these different things for different nutrients. That's another thing to it too.
I love that. Yeah. How do you help the pet parent cut through all this marketing BS, if you will? Because, you see so much of it on those. You see those beautiful pictures, on even the worst food, and it is confusing.
Yeah. It's definitely a challenge. And being in the marketing team now, one of, I think, my biggest pulls in the pet food world is helping people get a better idea of what questions to ask.
Mm-hmm.
It is a challenge to take only a package at face value on any retail shelf.
Mm-hmm.
I encourage people to get to know the brand and the people behind the brand name as much as possible. I think money can buy you anything. There are a lot of new players in this space. If you have look at the quantity of food that a company produces. How many lanes are they in? Are they making kibble and cans and Tetra Paks and supplements? And now we're going to make fresh food too.
Yeah.
I appreciate a brand that wants to sort of find their niche or expertise. Is there longevity behind the label? What was the onus for the company inception?
I like that.
And then what are their sort of guiding pillars for products that they choose to create? It is a great starting point to look for the words we were talking about before, or at least inquire, are the ingredients your brand is using human consumable? I prefer that to human grade. Human consumable. Are they whole or fresh form? Are they pre-processed in any way? Are you adding adulterants or preservatives, either to the ingredients before they go into a product or to the finished product itself? Then you want to be asking about the processing tools in place for safety, handling of those raw materials, batch testing, and vetting of suppliers for where ingredients are being procured.
Right.
If in that mix you are hearing words that help convey that there is thoughtful or stringent partnership with suppliers as far as proteins or produce. And a really important question to ask is, are you buying your ingredients yourself? As a brand.
Right.
Because pet food has a real easy path to allowing a co-manufacturer or even brokers in the meat or produce industry to be the suppliers. And if you are not the person going to farm ABC or produce supplier DFG, you are only taking their verifications or standards at sort of what's on the sticker level. So are you sourcing yourself is a great question to ask.
Yes, and if they balk at any of these questions and they're using the word, as a proprietary, mixture, or, that's, I can't give that information. They're hiding something. Back off the call. We have a great comment from Tina that says, I've been feeding Smallbatch for a year, rotate proteins every week. She buys the 18-pound box. Both of my dogs are eating duck, walked away from their bowls on the third day of eating duck. That has never happened. The next day, one of them resumed eating the duck, but hesitated. The other one refused. The texture seemed different that day.
First of all, thank you for being such a Smallbatch loyalist.
Yeah.
I think that the two proteins that we see the most interesting variants with are duck and
Turkey.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For whatever reason. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Turkey tends to have, some more natural oils in the meat. And then we were talking about the seasonality of birds.
That's exactly what I was going to say. Yeah.
Even turkeys, they're bigger birds. So they take longer to grow, but they still grow relatively quickly compared to a cow or a pig.
Sure.
And then duck, of course, a little bit higher fat content. Sometimes the fat content can vary, and that's a lot of times where the different texture comes from. And even the smell. Sometimes the smell can be a little like, oh, what's that? Because it's fattier.
Interesting. Yeah. Yeah, both of those would be ones that I would guess that you would have a lot more variance with. And they're not as easy to grow from what I understand from people that I know that only grow turkeys at Thanksgiving and tell me why. I'm only willing to do it one time a year kind of thing. So they're not an easy, and I love feeding turkey. That's a great protein for my dog. So that's one of the better ones for her.
We also always want people to look at, Tina, I have no idea where you live or where you purchase your Smallbatch regularly, but we always like to get feedback like that into our customer service line so that we can get information like, production dates, best by, lot code. Because once food leaves our facility, we don't always know exactly how quickly a retailer that is stocking our products is turning through the merchandise on their shelves.
Right.
The great thing about Smallbatch is we produce so many small batches across our production week. We have the ability to get food into the consumer landscape in about 3 to 4 weeks from the time that it's made. It's on shelves in places that go through inventory regularly. So we always just want to consider the freshness once it's in that retail, retail freezer. So
yeah, and some proteins definitely get turned over quicker in some areas than others. So if it's something that's maybe been frozen for 3 or 4 months, or in an area that doesn't do a lot of small batch, where the distributor isn't getting a lot of product turnover, it may just be kind of a freshness thing. Still safe to use because it's frozen,
right?
Course, but
she just added that she's in San Antonio in a small local store where she works part time, and she said, "I do think duck doesn't turn over as often." So.
I think that's it too.
Yes,
that's funny. I had seen another question that came up. So, how important do you feel like these small, like she's saying, it's a small local store? What is the importance of those small stores, especially as we're coming up on Neighborhood Pet Store Day, which I have no idea that was a thing, but I'm glad to know.
I love them because it's what got me my start in the pet industry. But Nicole, you were in sales for so long and kind of on the front lines with supporting retailers and hearing the word of mouth and that kind of thing. So
independent pet retail is everything when it comes to setting the trends and getting a resource into a neighborhood for discerning product selection and retail or consumer education. The staff that work at independent pet stores, they become our mouthpiece. And they can fill in all of that detail of information and story behind our brand that we can't put on the packaging.
There you go.
So I think to have a local store that really puts their heart behind the brands that they choose to have on shelf is a fantastic resource for any community. And it's the way that Smallbatch enthusiasm, I think, has sustained for all 20 years of our brand existence now. if you look at larger consumer grocery, whether it be in human or pet, you have to consider that there are a lot of other forces at play. They're looking for margins. They're looking for exclusivity. They're looking for volume, right? Maybe I have to be able to have X number of pounds of X number of products for a certain footage on a number of stores. So it's not always an indicator of, quality or belief in a brand to see a label on a larger, sort of big box retail shelf. Those independent stores, they have the muscle to get behind things that they believe in and take the time to attend education like the Feed Real Summit, or whatever is local in the area, to get together with their brand representatives to do in-store trainings and ask those nitty-gritty questions and really serve their customers and their specific pets and their needs in a much better way. So yay, independent pet retail.
Yeah, I love that.
Go support them, even if you're doing DIY.
Absolutely. Well, and I said earlier that we have a local co-op, but he's also got a small local pet store as part of it. And he brings in all these different brands and these small brands. And you can find them in any town. I think you can find these small pet stores. And I love going into them and talking to the employees. And they're so passionate. If they're working there, they're so passionate about it. So I love that.
Yeah. We do have Neighborhood Pet Store Day coming up, though, on September 27th, Saturday, this month.
That's crazy.
It's a really neat, the network, Independent Pet Network, is something that independent retailers can join and then participate in this event that they are hosting, Indie Pet. So Smallbatch on that day, this Saturday the 27th, in participating stores, we're going to be running a special on our frozen raw sliders. Those guys will be $4 off a bag. So a great option to try a variety of flavors, or maybe get Smallbatch into the mix of things that you're using when it's on a deal.
That's for dog and cat too. So
yeah. I love that. How do you see Smallbatch mixing with those of us that are DIY feeders?
Probably the first one that comes to mind is our base blends. They're the 2-pound bricks, we call them. They're just meat, bone, and organ. So they kind of loosely follow like a prey model style, 8%, 10%, 10%. Of course, with natural variation in there, because we use full cuts, so we don't have exact ratios. But I mean, for folks like you guys that are, not quite so spreadsheet oriented, like some other folks are, I think that works for a lot of people. So I think those would probably be the main one. They can be purchased and ordered through many local stores. You can get them by a case. You can get them by the each. It comes in all of our proteins, so chicken, turkey, beef, duck, pork, lamb, rabbit, and beef heart and chicken. So a couple of different, lots of different options there. And then of course the complete raw diets, the bulk boxes are probably the next one that I would think, to kind of have on hand. You can use base and then, add some other goodies and things. And then I think probably the freeze dried would be one for traveling. It's shelf stable. You just have to add water. It uses the same quality ingredients that all of our frozen raw foods do, just in a more convenient package and they're really lightweight. I know you said you go hiking, so they're like a backpack and they don't add a bunch of weight. So
and all those, I know all of us and all the people that I know that DIY, there's times where we just don't have the time, or you forgot to take it out of the freezer, or you're traveling or you're hiking or whatever. So it's always good to have some of these products on hand and as backup, and they work out really, really well. And so, I love your your products and
Great for emergency kits too.
Absolutely. That's another great one.
Yep.
Yeah.
People use that for their emergency kits. Just rotate through like every 4 to 6 months to make sure your product is fresh, but it's another good outlet.
Yeah. That's a really good point, especially when you're living in areas that could be impacted by natural disasters, and having that set aside. I really like that.
It's hurricane season on the East Coast. So.
Yes. Unfortunately, it's tornado season all the time around here.
There you go.
You never know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
The last one that hit close to me, I mean, the sirens didn't even go off. The poor people that were hit had no idea. So that's awful. One of the other things I want to talk about is grass-fed. Now, I'm sure you see that on the meats that you get. And I've recently read a lot about grass-fed versus grass-finished, and that a cow can be on the grass for one day and listed as grass-fed. So these, again, are ways that we can really be tricked as consumers.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I think a way to kind of help discern with the grass-fed, if it's, like you said, just a day versus lifetime, are they pasture-raised?
Right.
Usually if they're going to be out on pasture, that's going to be the majority of their life. So that might be one to think about, or if you have to ask, the company, are they pasture raised, or, that kind of thing. So that would probably be one to discern, but it's tricky. And a lot of it is, the marketing jargon nowadays, and being able to kind of wade through it is really hard.
So are those the kind of questions, Caitlin, that you get as a customer service rep?
Yeah, I do get quite a few questions about sourcing. A lot of time, where are the animals from? What are they fed? How are they raised? Those kinds of things. And it can be kind of tricky to explain it to folks that maybe aren't on this side of the industry. There's a lot of nuance to it. We're also fairly limited to some degree. We would love to source, every single one of our ingredients from Farmer Joe down the road, but we have to source a lot. And so, in setting up standards for ourselves as a company, we're able to kind of make sure we're flexible enough while still following those standards and being able to keep product on the shelves and raw materials that meet those standards. So we're doing our best to get the absolute best available to us.
Right. And as we were saying, natural disasters happen all over. So you can't limit your sourcing to one region, or you're going to be without product. And so, but just talking to people about that, and making them understand, why it isn't all local. I think that's a really good way to walk them through.
Yeah.
Can you walk us through the price differences between the small batch raw, gently cooked, freeze dried? So it sounds like you have all of the different options.
We do.
We know the MSRPs off the top of
I know. Price differences from a baseline. The suite of products that Small Batch produces fall in those kind of key buckets. We do raw, frozen diets, and base blends, both for dogs and cats.
Mm-hmm.
You always want to think about the number of steps or pieces of the process that are needed. Those are extra time and extra energy resource.
Mm-hmm.
That's always going to add to the cost of the finished product. So the most cost effective is going to be our bulk size raw products.
Right.
And not too far different from like the base blends to the complete and balanced diet when you're looking at price per ounce or price per pound.
Mm-hmm.
The next is going to be lightly cooked. We do a sous vide version of our complete diet for both dogs and cats. That extra step for the cook time and then portioning of the ingredients adds just a little bit. So it's, nominal. I feel like
it's $1 or so more depending on the protein.
Sure.
Yeah, about $1 difference per pound. And then freeze dried is across the board from a product perspective, generally going to be the most expensive of the formats because freeze drying is a bit more energy consumptive than a sous vide or
consuming
a frozen raw product. So freeze dried, you're getting the convenience and, you know, accessibility anytime, anywhere to premium materials in our foods. But if price is the primary consideration, raw is definitely the way to go. We offer a loyalty program at most of our independent retailers. So when you can buy in bulk and you package it with that loyalty, buy 12 units, get one free.
Nice.
My gosh. I think
pretty
the
significant.
the chicken bulk boxes get down to like $7.40 a pound.
Nice.
Yeah.
And that is for 100% humanely raised, beautiful chicken organ bones and 100% organic produce.
Yeah.
So when we're talking about the partnership with the DIYers, I don't think I could go procure all of those ingredients at the caliber that Smallbatch uses and also take the time to make it myself and come out ahead in a lot of cases. So Smallbatch becomes that this is as good or better than I could do myself option.
Nice. Well, and I think people, when they see the cost of freeze dried, they just like really blanch, but they don't understand that tiny amount you have to feed because it's so concentrated. And so that's a big consideration when you're looking at pricing too, is that you're getting a lot more bang for your buck in that sense. And like you said, the convenience in having it. So I always try to keep some of that around too, but that's great. Well, we've coming up to, we're already 45 minutes in. Is there anything else you want to talk about? We have somebody, May says, I DIY raw feed. A few years ago, I traveled across the country and a friend gifted me a small batch beef bulk box to use for our trip. Every night during our trip, we would stop at a hotel with 2 coolers to unload the food to the tiny hotel freezer, transfer fresh ice into the cooler, keep the small batch frozen. Lesson learned, use freeze dried next time.
I really commend the commitment there though.
Absolutely.
Like, even though it's a lesson learned, like I love the commitment. That's awesome.
Yeah. Like I said, I told you earlier, I was traveling for 8 days last week and I used a combination of different products because it's so hard to travel with raw. It's so hard. So that's great. That's great.
Why we make the myriad of categories available. You know, there's most raw feeders, I think, have that fun story about the cooler in the hotel room. I've done it myself.
Same.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, and I travel with my sisters who are both they cringe at the raw stuff that I feed the dog. And so it's so much easier if I take my dog every time. And so it's like, I try to make sure I don't have to have a lot of raw with me when I'm with them.
Bring something a bit more benign.
Yes. They're getting much better though. This is the third time we've traveled together and they're like, okay, we're getting there. We understand how it's so good for her. So
awesome.
Yeah. Teaching people, that's a good part of it too.
You know, having something like the freeze dried or even like our, pre-made frozen and lightly cooked foods being so convenient, it's a really good and easy introduction for a lot of people that are like not ready to make the jump into doing their own foods. So I really like our products for that. I've introduced quite a few friends to it.
Yeah. I think that is a really good way. And it's a great segue into doing your own and then having the combination of, like you said, a full arsenal. We want to make sure we have their needs covered. I have more in my freezer for her than I do for myself. So I have the dog freezer out in the garage, and then I have the little freezer in the house for me.
Yep. That's probably like step 3 or 4. You start climbing the ladder.
Oh, absolutely.
And then you start buying extra freezers. Yeah.
Yes, you never know what's going to be in that freezer. Well, this has been great. I'm really excited to meet you, Nicole, next month at the Feed Real Summit.
Looking forward to being there.
Yeah,
I will be
excited.
jealous from afar.
Yes, you'll have FOMO going on that weekend. We'll be thinking about you. I'm excited that you've joined us this year. We have such a great lineup of partners, and I'm so glad we've included you in that. So again, $4 off small batch 3-pound raw sliders for dogs and cats available in store at participating independent realtors or retailers on Neighborhood Pet Store Day on September 27th, which will be here before we know it. It's already September 2nd. So
Yeah.
I don't know where this year has gone. So it will be here before you know. So keep that in mind and try out this product. It's a great product. You won't be disappointed. All right. Well, thank you so much for being on with me.
Absolutely.
And we'll see you next month. Bye, everyone.
Okay.
Thanks, guys.